Good morning and welcome to the Spokane City Council study session. Was waiting for one more council member, but it's 11:05, so thanks everyone, appreciate your patience. Councilmember Burke is not here yet. Councilmember Mumm is at a city council related meeting in Olympia on capital spending for cities. She might be able to join us once we hit the noon hour, if we're still going. Also, I just wanted to note we sent out a media release on this study session for council members to discuss the budget, and there was an error in the original release. It says it was a council mayor discussion, and that was not the intent of the meeting. We've had 3 very long discussions between the council and the administration that we streamed on Facebook Live in October, and this is really the chance for council to talk about it. So I apologize to anyone that thought they were coming to watch the mayor and the council discuss it. We have other opportunities to discuss it, and also to the mayor, because I think she saw the alert and said, what the heck? They're having a discussion with me and they haven't even invited me. So we sent out a correction this morning once we realized what had happened. So apologies for that. Councilmember Kinnear.
So just to be clear, this is an open meeting. Anybody's invited. I know we've had administration to many of our study sessions. It's not an exclusion. It's just an oversight that you didn't get a specific invitation. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's totally an open meeting to observe. It's just the difference of whether you're one of the talking participants on it. One of the, we continue to fine tune our budget process. The City Council is in charge of passing and approving the final budgets. We are constrained, as most people on this call understand, by the Open Public Meetings Act, in the sense that we can only have 3 council members discussing things in real time at the same time, unless we have noticed it as a public meeting and the public can observe either by video or by phone in other times when in-person meetings are allowed in person. And so it's always challenging in budget. We have 3 council members who are the budget work group who are trying to work with staff and get things figured out, but we can't have a meeting of all 7 without it being public and noticed and all that. And so as one of the adjustments this year, we wanted to include some study sessions where we could talk as a full council about issues on the budget and get people's feedback in the middle of it, rather than simply getting a proposal on the final budget and then voting up or down on budget night. So our hope is to have 2 of these sessions at least. So this is the first one, and then on December 2nd, I believe, we're going to have another session on budget and also American Recovery Plan. So that's the hope. And our staff, who works on the budget side of it, Matt Boston and Tim Dunavant, they put together a memo that the budget work group adopted to send out on part of the budget issues. Most of it has to do with individual positions that impact the general fund. Last report I got, there were about 258 unfilled vacant positions across the whole city. The vast majority of them are in enterprise funds like the water department, solid waste, things that don't impact the general fund, which is really where most of the budget discussion is usually focused on, because the general fund are the discretionary funds. So we didn't include those in today's discussion. In the next discussion, we will probably have some recommendations on those. And most of the recommendations that the budget work group were advocating were for vacant positions that had been vacant for a very long time, and or the administration had not requested that they be filled. What happens if you have a vacant position in the budget all next year? You don't spend the money on it, but it shows up in the budget as the money is committed, which means you can't spend that money on another priority. So we're trying, in response to the revenue shortfall in 2020, we're trying to free up more money for the general fund for positions that aren't going to be filled anyway, even if we leave them in the budget. And that will give us more flexibility for other priorities and initiatives. And so the budget work group went through and made some recommendations, and then Matt Boston sent out requests to the rest of council, and they submitted recommendations for eliminating vacant positions. And, you know, it was not a vote, we weren't doing that, but we were informed by kind of the weight of opinion and came up with this initial list. And this is just a list for talking about. And undoubtedly, there will be positions on here that once we consider them and get further feedback from the administration, we'll leave in the budget. And there's probably other positions that we might add to the list to be vacated. And then there's a third possibility, which is you can leave the position as a formal position, but put it in something called contra status, which shows that the money is not being spent in 2021. So those are all options on these positions. And then the other issue that we flagged back in our meetings with the mayor's office in October and in our written comments was whether or not to use monies from the 1590 sales tax and 1406 sales tax rebates for homeless shelter services or to use them for permanent housing. And so that's included in the memo too to talk about. But really anything is fair game today. So I will stop talking for a moment and then just open the floor to council members to give comments on anything budget related and or ask questions. We've got our staff on the line as well as the budget work group people are on the line. So we'll start with Councilmember Stratton.
I just need some clarification. So up until today, we've been forwarding just what you talked about, some of the changes we'd like to see, some suggestions, what our priorities were. Are we going to go through what the culmination of those activities, what they showed, and if there's a pattern here, or I'm just not sure where we go at this point once we've given that first set of or suggestions to Matt.
So our goal is that we discuss any ideas that council members have. We divided it into two sections for two different study sessions. So this has some of that feedback, but not nearly all of that feedback. And I would encourage any council member, since we have 90 minutes today, if there are things, even if they're not in these subject areas of general fund position reductions or how to fund housing, I would still bring them up today on anything that you feel strongly about, just so that we can get the conversation going. But I'm imagining that we'll have another memo kind of like this in a couple weeks that will have more of the feedback that council members brought. So we'll do our best to do that, but it's a lot of feedback from 7 different people, and I don't know that it all gets captured necessarily. So really this is an opportunity to bring up anything, but with some focus on the memo of these positions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just interested, especially in when we looked at those positions that you just explained that are out there that haven't been filled. I mean, I think there were some that had not been filled since 2017, 2018, and we looked at, do we keep those in or do we remove them? And we kind of thought about that. I was just interested in what if there were areas where we all agreed, and if there was some kind of a number that reflected, if we did all that, what that savings would be. What what would that amount be that we could possibly use somewhere else?
I'm going to turn over to Matt Boston a little bit because he's the person that got everyone's feedback. And but I just want to make a comment. On this memo, there's two kinds of positions. One is a current vacant position that's been vacant for a while, and that it seemed like some weight of the council supported removing. And then there were also several new positions proposed by the administration in their preliminary budget and their final budget. And so those are also included, so they're not that. The individual savings for each position is in the memo. I don't have the total of what that is. And again, it's a little bit apples and oranges because it's savings of current positions and then savings of positions not undertaken. But Matt, I'll let you maybe address a little bit of what you saw from the council feedback and what you were attempting to convey to us. He's there.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Council President. Essentially what we did, I mean, Brian laid it out pretty well. We gathered information, and the net impact of each of the different department removals, additions, or adjustments is on that memo. While there isn't a formalized number on there because we're talking about some additions, some subtractions, we're kind of going into what we're going to get consensus on overall as a council, whereas what we were getting in the information gathering phase wasn't necessarily a vote. So we couldn't necessarily go by saying, okay, well, there's 4 people that have said, let's talk about this position versus other positions. This was getting somewhat of an interest for other council members out there to start the discussion. And then combining that with, for lack of a better term, a weighted average with the council budget work group and putting together this memo, and then again taking an initial stab at saying, okay, this is what we're seeing kind of collectively. Let's look at this memo. Let's go from there. Let's add from the memo moving forward into the next study session and budget discussions.
I also wanted to note that there was one error that we found in that. So it says delete a vacant clerk 3 position in the clerk's office. There is no vacant position in the clerk's office, and that was just there. But so there may be some things like that in there, or we may hear from the administration on a particular thing of like, oh no, we actually deleted another position, and that person is what we're going to do. So that's there. But the other thing I was going to just mention is that we were getting vacancy reports from civil service throughout this fall, and I've forwarded some of them to you as I received them. But we did finance the latest report we have, and I think I have forwarded it to council. They went through and kind of scrubbed it a bit and updated it. So some of the positions that have been vacant for a long time weren't necessarily there anymore. So I'm not sure how they cleaned up that data or whatever, but the most recent report seemed markedly different than the previous reports when I looked at them. But anyway, other council members, questions, comments? Councilmember Wilkerson.
Well, thank you, Council President. First of all, I want to welcome Matt. I think this is his big coming out presentation, and what an asset he's been to council, certainly to me as finance chair, working through this whole process, because it has been a process. The first thing that really I just want to call out is the deficit, or where we did not see funding, was around our contractual obligations as our various unions are negotiating new contracts, and where that money was going to come from, and to kind of ignore it like it wasn't going to happen. And so I know as Matt worked through that, there was some, pretty good numbers that it could be around $4 million as going into the next year. So I think if Matt just take us down that road for a minute of how he kind of worked through that for us, I think that'd be a good place to start, because that will impact the employees we have right now versus the ones we're looking at eliminating or adding.
Absolutely. So worked together close with Tim Donovan, who's also on the call here. Tim, who was the director of budget for many years, as we all know, has a lot of source knowledge, as well as just kind of digging into the individual CBAs per bargaining unit. And so as we all know, we have several collective bargaining units that work here with the city. Some of which have bargaining agreements that are currently expired, some of which are going to be expiring this year. We need to be conscious of the ongoing negotiations that are happening that will affect the overall budget and a payment in 2022 if there is a bargaining unit that comes to an agreement that has an expiring agreement at that time, because there will be back pay that's going to be reflected on that. The biggest one of note is fire, which was expired in 12/31/20, if I recall correctly, and does have binding arbitration to pretty much promise them a raise, if not use comps within the area to kind of develop those cost of living adjustments. So that's kind of how unions are going to be looking at things when they're going into negotiations. Obviously, there is no crystal ball of, hey, there will be raises or there won't be raises. We can look at what has historically happened year over year. And we can have a pretty good idea of things per discussions with Tim and myself, and as well as Paul and just other members of staff within the city. This is kind of a number that we've spitballed around. While the original number, yes, was we were thinking $4 million, we did reduce it down to $3 million to think that a chunk of that will be a prior period adjustment, because we do have expiring CBAs that expired last year. So if this is going to be a payment in 2022, it may not directly affect the 2022 budget, but it is going to affect the 2022 cash outlay if that payment does happen in 2022.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, thank you. Just on that point, yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's the responsible thing to put the dollars aside that we know are going to be coming. My only caveat or hesitancy is I just want to make sure that we're doing it in such a way that's not negatively impacting the city's negotiating position with those collective bargaining units. So that's the main thing. But we absolutely have to put the money aside.
Yeah. And
right.
And that is the challenge. There's a challenge, and because the agreement hasn't been negotiated yet, and we have to pass a budget that creates enough cash flow next year, we're in that dilemma. So we can just do the best we can. So.
And the fortunate piece there, sorry to interrupt,
No,
Council
I'm
President.
done.
The fortunate piece is that we do have several bargaining units that are within that agreement period right now. So we're negotiating with several. So while we're earmarking a certain amount of money, it isn't earmarked for one bargaining unit.
Oh, Councilmember Kinnear and then Councilmember Stratton. Oh, Councilmember Kinnear and then Councilmember Stratton.
I just want to remind everybody that when the police guild was in those years of bargaining, the administration, finance, set aside an amount of money every year so that when they finally did settle, we had some money squirreled away. And so we're not in that situation now. And I think Matt's right. It is a bit of a guessing game as to how much, and it doesn't say how much is for each bargaining unit. It's just being prudent to make sure that we have some money, and it may end up being less, it may end up being more, but we have some money that we've tucked away so that when they are finalizing their contracts, we'll have that to use. So it's not without precedent, I guess is what I'm saying.
Councilmember Stratton.
This is a question for Tim, and Tim, I may be wrong, but do we have at least one bargaining unit that did not take raises or increased salary for employees? Something is telling me we have one out there that, do you remember anything like that?
Yeah, I think in the current environment, all of them have had increases recently. The only time I can think of when there was no increase was back in 2000. It was a period of time from 2012 through maybe 14, where Local 270 agreed to a contract. It was toward the end of 2011, but it was for the next few years, where they agreed to zero COLA in exchange for no changes to their medical. As long as that they weren't going to have to pay any more for medical over that same period of time, they'd be willing to forego that. So they went with 0% increase for a few years. And then I think subsequent, in early 2012 or mid 2012, the Managerial Professional Association, I don't remember specifically what the COLAs were, but the total cost of compensation, so they might have gotten a COLA, but I think they may have paid more for medical. If I remember correctly, the total cost of compensation over that 3-year period was next to nothing. I don't remember the exact number. It was a fraction of a percent that they got over that period of time. So that, that's been several years. I think currently they've all been getting either.
I was thinking for 270 that they did that in the last couple of years. I was just curious if that's going to come back,
The last couple of years, they've been getting increases.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
And just a quick point of clarification, Tim had just reminded me that Fire's collective bargaining agreement has expired on 12/31/2019, not 2020. So we'll be at least 2 years in arrears.
Yeah.
Well,
No, go ahead.
Council President, I just want to we are all aware of the wage pressures that is affecting every industry. And if we are not really looking at that, we've had some discussion with HR and civil service, what that looks like. How do we get new people? How do we retain them? Going forward to meet the needs of the city, that continues to be a challenge. So, which is why I'm pretty conservative on this budget, because going forward, we know that's what it is. So I don't feel we can put our heads in the sand and not acknowledge that challenge.
And I'll just mention that for the last couple months, we've been requesting the executive session to discuss the bargaining status with all the expired or soon-to-be expired contracts. And we haven't gotten that scheduled yet, but I do look forward to that because I think from hearing the feedback from the administration, they want to have a frank discussion with us, but they don't want to do it in public. They want to kind of keep their bargaining cards close to their chest on that. And so I have requested that multiple times. And so I hope we'll get that scheduled soon and just get a status on the ones that have expired. And the Police Guild contract is expiring next month. So that will be another big one that's added to it. Tim, did you have something?
The only group that has a contract for 2022 is the prosecutors, and there's only about 10 or 12 of them, and the rest of the contracts have already expired or expired at the end of this year.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing. I'm so sorry. One thing I did want to add for the group is as we were, preparing this memo and we were looking at vacancies. Now, this is just talking about the vacancies that we're looking at. One thing that did come up with Tanya Wallace, the CFO, as well as a department director that came and talked to me directly, is also to be conscious of the civil service process that requires lists to expire before that they can repost a specific job opening. So there may be positions that are out there when we're talking about these things that there may be a long date that is on there, but just like Council President said, there could be justification that we do get information back from a certain department or administration that's saying, hey, we're just waiting for this list to expire for civil service so that we can repost this, just based on the rules and regulations that we have out there that the city has to follow, which I know we've addressed in separate council meetings, but is definitely something that has been brought up to me since the posting of this memo, and I think it'll be a topic of conversation moving forward.
And another variable that we haven't attempted as of yet to apply is there are quite a few vacancies in the fire department, and they are planning on having a fire officer academy in 2022, but it's unclear how many of those vacancies are going to be able to be filled, even on the best case scenario. We're going to hear from the administration on Monday at PIE's committee a little more about that, but there's potentially several positions in fire that are funded in 2022 that just won't be filled despite the best efforts of everyone. And so we'll have to figure out how to account for that in the budget realistically. And police, a little bit similar, not nearly as many vacancies, but there, I think last I saw, around 16. And they're going to also, they don't have an exclusive academy. They attend another academies. It's a little unclear. So we're going to need to hear as we get closer to budget night, really how many people do we really expect to hire? So again, we're not proposing removing any public safety positions per se, but are we going to actually be spending it, or can we repurpose that money for other important initiatives that impact public safety? Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, thank you. I still believe we should look at using ARPA dollars to fund PPE and testing so that we can bring back the firefighters that we lost. I think that would be the quickest, best, probably cheapest way to fill those slots, and we need to get those slots filled. In addition to that, I was just going to focus on a couple other things that I've thought about in terms of the budget. So for me, I think there needs to be a bigger emphasis on public safety, particularly law enforcement. And you mentioned 16 vacancies, and I know that could be about 30 in the coming weeks or months, and even greatly more than that if federal or state mandates on vaccines come down. That could impact quite a few more law enforcement officers in Spokane too. So my suggestion has been, hiring bonuses so that we can get those slots filled and make that a priority. But also, I think to go beyond that and to allow, if we can get those hiring bonuses in place and become competitive, then I think it's important for us to consider allowing SPD to hire ahead so that we can get ahead of the coming, future retirements and shortfalls. And frankly, we need more officers out on the street regardless. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to have more officers being brought on. And I think that would be really, really good for the community. And I continue to see just an increase in responses from the community frustrated with crime and criminal activity, both in their neighborhoods as well as downtown. And so I think making that public safety an emphasis is really important. Second, last year during the lead up to the budget, there was a lot of discussion, mostly by the administration, on opening an Office of Economic Development. And I'm not quite sure, I haven't heard a lot of advocacy around that this year, but I very strongly believe that needs to be a priority. Economic development needs to be something that we're focused on. And, we've got Steve McDonald as the division director, and he's got a lot of economic development knowledge. But the problem is he's the division director and can't necessarily be having his, his day job be focusing on specifically the economic development piece. And so I think we need to open that department, staff it, make that a priority, and that will help, I think, link the PDAs and really just focus some of our growth efforts and whatnot in the city. And then somewhat related, planning. I really think that we need to put more resources into planning, whether it's for staff or to hire third parties to do some of the work. But that needs to be an emphasis, and I think we should really try for some big audacious goal of getting the bulk of those recommendations in the HAP, at least in process in 2022, and I think that's going to take quite a bit more resources to do that. So those are some things I'm really focused on. A few other smaller ones, but those are probably the biggest.
I will get Councilmember Wilkerson, and just wanted to mention, thanks for all those. I'm taking notes for myself. Secondly, feel free, council members, to email council members Kinnear, Wilkerson, and myself, or Matt Boston on any specific things if you don't bring it up today. I did want to just note on the economic development, I endorse the emphasis on it. Currently, economic development people are in the planning department, and there was a proposal at one point to divide that, and I don't think we've seen that resurface yet, but I just want for people watching is that we do have economic development activities historically in the plan department, and so the question is whether to surface them as a separate department or keep them there. But Councilmember Wilkerson.
Thank you, Council President. Couple things. So first of all, on the fire, I had a conversation with Chief Schaefer about the vacancies in the fire department, and he said his best case scenario would be to have 2 academies next year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And if that was completely full, that would net 40 new firefighters, best case scenario. So I just kind of keep that on the forefront, that those positions are available for them. For Councilmember Cathcart, I hear him on the bonus for police. Just as finance, I'm challenged, how would that trickle down through the whole organization for every other employee that's frontline and just as much needed? So challenging bargaining issue, I'm sure, but I'm not saying it's off the table, but that's like opening, for me, Pandora's box of how could we equitably execute that throughout the city going forward. And I do support economic development. I agree. I want planners. I'm proposing contract planners as soon as we can get them in there, and they are embedded in this budget going forward. So,
Councilmember Kinnear, and then Mr. Boston.
Thanks. I want to say thank you, Councilmember Wilkerson. I support that regarding bonuses, because the equity piece is huge for me. I also support public safety. Realistically, even if we added 50 new police positions, we wouldn't be able to put them in the budget right now. We'd be tying up money because we wouldn't be able to get them on board for at least a year. And so I'd like to see how this all shakes out in after January, because there are going to be more retirements. Right now, I talked with Tracy Meidel about this too. They're down police because there's a lot of sickness and injuries. So there are people that are out sick and have been injured, and so we're seeing that take its toll on response times and what police can actually realistically expect to get done. But I want to see how this all shakes out next year. Realistically, how many positions do they need? I have not heard from Craig Meidel that he wants 50 police. I would like to hear from him what he thinks, and we've added 50 police over the years I've been here, so I would like to hear from him what he really realistically thinks, how many he needs, not us guessing. Thanks.
Mr. Boston, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something really quick, and ironically, we were having a conversation about it this morning. While we do have a significant amount of fire department vacancies, based on our current staffing arrangements and the requirements that are out there for departments and trucks, we can't think about that as a salary savings because we still have requirements of bodies being on trucks. So while you're seeing vacancies, really, while there's a vacancy savings for positions that are open, really that's going to be above and beyond what the actual savings would be because it's going to be staffed with overtime personnel. So while there is a savings there and thinking that we can reshuffle that money, there really isn't a savings there because we're going to be paying time and a half from an overtime perspective unless some sort of change happens from a requirement of operational management. So I just wanted to keep that in everybody's minds when they're thinking about seeing those large vacancies with fire.
That's a great point, and as we know, each month we get the report on overtime. We're way over the overtime budget in fire, and that's a direct result of those vacancies. So again, just before I got on the meeting, I heard from the administration they're going to be coming to us on Monday to address some of those practicalities, so stay tuned for that. Keep any comments or questions. I did want to highlight in this memo the Department of Office of Civil Rights. So the administration this year hired a project employee, Mr. Gerald Haynes. We're super excited to have him, and he's filling some of those duties that we imagined and also trying to do planning for what the full Office of Civil Rights might look like. And so we, I think, consistently in the council have been advocating for that. So we put in this memo what it would cost to actually have a 3-person office. And we took some of the money for one of the positions that the administration had put in the budget. So the net to do that, the total would be about $325,000, and the net would be $234,000 off of the administration's budget. But just wanted to throw that out there for any commentary from council members.
And just to put another note on that, it may in fact be less than that because we have not only Jarrell's position that's there right now that is currently actually going to be funded for the next year. Where it lands within the budget is a little murky, but we believe that it's in the budget for next year. Obviously, there's just been some shuffling of where that budget line item lands within the budget, and then there is the DEI position that administration has put forth that is within HR right now. So if we reshuffle those two positions, we're really only adding one position at the end of the day, which might net to, roughly $100,000 if you were to think about it that way.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I wanted to just note, if you look at the end of the memo, this isn't a net change in the budget, but it has to do with funding source. Both council and the administration have been advocating for more funding for homeless services in 2022, both in terms of capital investments and also services. And in the administration's proposed budget, quite a bit of that was going to be funded from 1590 and 1406. And those numbers are related to the House bills, which are different than the accounting code numbers that are in the memo, in case you see a 1595. But so the feedback, at least that I heard from council in our budget workshops, was that they wanted the 1590 and the 1406 money to go mostly to support permanent affordable housing, both investments in actual housing and services to keep people in that housing. And so this, there's at least two other options out there. The legislature has said that the real estate excise tax surcharge can be used for capital investments in homeless housing. And then also the sales tax from criminal justice fund is also permissible because it's reducing homelessness tends to reduce crime. And so those are potential options for funding for that. Councilmember Stratton.
I don't know about anybody else, but my constituents have made it very clear. I get emails, I get phone calls. They want that affordable housing. I mean, that is the priority. I mean, there's lots of worries and concern. It doesn't make homelessness less, but this community, at least who I'm hearing from, wants that affordable housing. And so I completely agree that those funds should be used for affordable housing.
Councilmember Wilkerson.
I have to echo Councilmember Stratton. I heard the same thing, that money was for housing. When we voted for that tax, that was Council Manick. That was not supported by the administration. That's what we said those dollars are going to be used for. And the people who are out there doing that work were immediately concerned that none of it was going for the intended purpose. So I support that money goes to housing as was originally designed, and the community deserves us to follow through on what we said that money was for.
Councilmember Kinnear.
And I will echo both of you. I will also say that when we talk about affordable housing, we have to be specific about what we're talking about. And when I talk about affordable, I talk about workforce housing, I talk about very low income, and I talk about home ownership for folks right now who are priced out of the market. So those to me are all the categories that we need to be focusing on. And that's what I'm hearing. People want to participate and start building wealth by owning their own home and not to be perennial renters.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to piggyback on what everybody else has already said. Yeah, I think 1590 was intended, recalling the discussion that we had at the council level, and certainly my outlook at the time was a little bit different, but I don't recall any discussion about using these dollars for, shelters or services for those experiencing homelessness, anything like that. It was really, the emphasis was on housing, perhaps some services related to housing, but the emphasis was housing. And so I firmly believe that that's where the money should go. And also, this is the only pot of money that exists that can be used for home ownership purposes. And I think that that's really important to remember. And so we need to be very, I think, cognizant of that and be very deliberate in how we spend these dollars. But just as a kind of an aside, slightly unrelated, I know there's a proposal to use some ARP dollars for housing, which is probably a good thing, but my preference would be that we exhaust 1590 before we move on and use ARP. Use the most restrictive before you use the less restrictive funding source for that. So anyway, just throwing that out there.
Some other issues that aren't included in this memo that we may want to talk about today or our next session is, one, we talked about ARP funds, and again, the weight of council commentary, though not necessarily unanimously, is that we have a process for allocating ARP funds, and so council has been talking about not having it in the budget. But for instance, last week we considered several proposals, and one of them was for $1 million for third-party vendors to do planning that we've been talking about. But there are other proposals, and we also did some, talked about capital improvements in parks. And there were several other items that we talked about. But we're continuing on that process. But in the mayor's proposed final budget, there are several items that are ARP, presumed ARP, but they're identified as to be determined, which to be determined means there isn't really a funding source. And in my comment and world is they either shouldn't be in the budget or they should be designated in an actual budget funded source. So for example, there was a position to add 8 solid waste positions to help with the cleanups downtown and throughout the city. And there's plenty of money in the solid waste unallocated reserves, and that seems like in the budget it should be there. Now ARP might come back in and says, no, we'll do that then, but I would prefer to get it in the budget on the solid waste unallocated reserves so that we know that we can start hiring for permanent positions to do that work, as opposed to waiting for the ARP process on that. And again, kind of like Councilmember Cathcart mentioned, that's keeps the less restricted funds there. So that was one issue. The other big issue still remains public safety capital. You know, we had a program on how to fund that from increasing revenues from the property tax 1% plus a match, and we took a pause from that. So that there's significant asks in fire and police. We're still going to have to figure that out. So I hope our next study session we can talk some more about how to do that. Are there other? Yes, Councilmember Wilkerson.
Thank you, Council President. So that was what was disconcerting to me in the mayor's proposed budget, the significant number of to-be-determined funding resources. And I know ARPA is in play, but I've been in several other meetings with other nonprofits, and the county is like, they are not counting that money into budgeting processes until it has been allocated. And so to be hanging our hat on that makes me concerned. I'm not saying that we are not supportive of the city, because we are, and there's lots that qualifies under those ARPA dollars. But right now, going into that thinking that's the only game plan we got, then I think we need to take another look at what other potential funding opportunities could be if the ARPA dollars do not play out as the administration has requested.
Mm-hmm. All right. Other budget comments, questions? All right. Councilmember Wilkerson, and then Councilmember Stratton.
Just my last concern is, again, the number of positions that the administration has requested, 50 plus. I'm concerned about, that significant increase of staffing over there without the identified funding source.
Okay. Councilmember Stratton.
So I sent this comment to Matt a couple days ago, and I just want to reiterate it. Regarding the positions, I think that it is in our best interest for the people we represent to make sure that our departments and our feet-on-the-ground employees, those employees out there serving our citizens in our districts, in our neighborhoods, that we give every opportunity to have full staffing in those departments. I don't think at this point, with everything that's gone on with COVID and all of the upheaval, that anybody should be considering these higher level positions that create, I think, the more division heads and assistant city managers and all of these people, the more that you bring in, or city administrators, all of these people that you bring in at the top, it just creates a lack of communication, because the higher up they go, the more they get paid, there's more people talk. It's a nightmare. So for me personally, I can't support those positions. I will support the guys in water that are doing work. I'll support the guys picking up garbage. I mean, I just think we really need to focus on what every household in Spokane is focused on, and that's the basics and how to get out of this, how to do it reasonably, financially intact, but not to wander into those higher paying, higher executive level positions, because this now is just not the time. So that's my comment on that.
Thank you, and I'll go to Councilmember Cathcart and then Councilmember Kinnear.
Thank you. I somewhat agree with what Councilman Stratton just said. I guess my only disagreement is I know there's 2 positions that the mayor has requested in her office. And, the council side has added positions during COVID, and I don't believe that the mayor really has. And I think she's asking for, some support both for Johnny, our city administrator, with a deputy administrator. And I do think perhaps the salary there should be, perhaps further negotiated. But, it would help with continuity of operations. And frankly, Johnny, I think, has proven himself to be very effective in the things that he's involved in. And so to have somebody to support him, I think would probably be a really positive thing and would just help him to be even more effective in that role. So I don't have a problem with it. I think we can talk about what the salary requested for those are. But I think just to make sure that things are running smoothly and that they have the staff that they need on the other side of the house, I don't have a big issue with that.
So I'm not sure which positions we've added since COVID. I know we've had, in the 2019 budget, we added positions to help us do our work. I'm not sure what we added last year in the council office. I want to echo what Councilmember Stratton said, because I am very conservative fiscally, and you're absolutely right, Councilmember Stratton, this is not the time to be adding more high-paid jobs. We need to really focus on the basics, the core values of our citizens, our basic public safety, parks, libraries, and public utilities infrastructure. That's pretty much it. And that's where we need to be placing our emphasis. So thank you for saying that. It seems perfectly obvious to me, but I appreciate you actually articulating that. Thank you.
Councilmember Wilkerson.
I'm sorry, I'm really chatty today. So I am focused really on what we hear a lot, the customer experience. How are we meeting the needs in the community from what people are expecting of us? Yes, that's police, fire, garbage, the other basics, water. I hear Councilmember Cathcart, some of that, there may need to be a position over there to support the work that's going on, but I would then be requesting kind of what is the structure over there in on the administration side, and how will those departments come into play, or how do they support each other, and then what will a deputy mayor look like? I don't know if we ever had one, and what role that person played back then. So at that point, I'd just be seeking some more information and a good job description.
And I'll just add, my position has been we need to fill the current executive positions that are vacant. So we've been missing a policy advisor for the mayor for most of the year. So having that person would take some pressure off. We've been missing the division director position vacated by Mr. Alexander. I don't believe that position's been posted yet. We're struggling to find a planning director. I think we're getting close to one. So I would really like to get all those executive positions filled first, and then and the mayor has promised us a report on her reconfigured reporting system on how that. So I'd love to hear all that and then evaluate that. And I personally am not really prepared to add these positions in the short amount of time before we do those things. But generally agree that we need to make sure we're appropriately staffed, but let's fill those vacancies and then see what we need. Councilmember Stratton.
Just one more thing, then I'll be quiet. I've been at City Hall since 2005. I have never been part of, and I've worked in mayor's offices, I've never been part of or know of discussions regarding having to hire a deputy city administrator. We've never had one, even the worst of times during 2008, 2009. So I would need a good job description, or I would need some really good reasons to why we need that now. I can't put my head around that one. So, but the city of Spokane has never had a deputy city administrator. We've never had that position.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, and I've actually asked for a job description. I haven't seen one yet either, but I have asked for that. One other comment, somebody, I think it was Councilman Wilkerson, mentioned, the customer experience, and I think that that's really, really important. And frankly, there's probably an opportunity right now to really maybe reimagine 311 now that we've got a vacancy in that director position. I was talking the other day with our former mayor, and he had shared that there was a time several years ago that they had actually looked at perhaps contracting that service out with Lighthouse for the Blind as one example of a way of both supporting, folks in our community, but also they're trained and very proficient in those sorts of activities. And so there might be a way that we can ensure proper staffing in 311 and continuity there and improve the customer experience. I'll tell you, I've heard directly from our city administrator as well, was at the same meeting as I was in Shiloh Hills a couple weeks back, and the number of complaints that we got about just no answers to 311, difficulty getting information was pretty frustrating to hear. And so anyway, anything we can do to improve that, and I think there's an opportunity right now as we're talking budget and there's a vacancy there to maybe reimagine how we approach that department.
Councilmember Wilkerson.
I have to echo Councilmember Cathcart. Every neighborhood meeting I've been to, the frustration has been 311. We have instructed the community that is their first point of contact. If you want to know something, call 311. And they get there, and it's not the people. I just think they're overloaded with something else they have to do or understaffed. But because of that, the citizens are most in a constant state of just mad because they can't get the help that they're trying to get from the city. So I would certainly entertain definitely staffing that department up. And Councilmember Cathcart, what other ideas are out there for the customer experience?
Great. All right. Any other comments for today? All right. So we'll get ready to wrap this up. So again, we're still in the middle of budget process. Our goal is to pass something from council that amends the proposed budget no later than December 13th and pass the budget that night. So people can enjoy the holidays and don't have to come back for council meetings. So that's the goal. In the meantime, Mr. Boston and Dunafant will be working on an additional memo for our next study session on the 2nd. We'll be in continued communication with the administration on understanding the council's feedback and kind of the direction council's going and administration's beliefs and what they're proposing and advocating for. And we do have, for those in the public watching, we do have another budget hearing component of our city council meeting this next Monday night at the end of the meeting. And if you want to testify about your thoughts on the budget for 2022, you sign up between 5 and 6 p.m. Go to the city council's webpage and then instructions on how to do that. And we'd be glad to hear from you for up to 3 minutes. So it will continue to be a moving target, but again, I feel like we're in good shape time-wise. And between the multi-hour workshops that we held with the administration, I think we've had more public transparency than we've had in my time on the budget. And this study session and then an additional study session. And of course, when we do get to the budget night, there'll be plenty of time for testimony there. But I would urge people, if you have opinions on the budget, to start emailing them to us now so that those thoughts get taken into account. But the night of the budget passage is pretty late in the process to move things. So with that, everyone, have a great week and weekend. Please take care of yourself, and if you can, take care of someone else. Thanks for your participation, everyone. Thanks to Mr. Donovan, Mr. Boston so much, and thanks to the finance people in the administration for all their work on the budget as well. We're adjourned.